The story of Kuchisake-Onna didn't begin in 1979. Its roots extend back to the Edo period, 1603-1868. Preserved in oral traditions and regional folklore that predated the modern iteration by centuries. These early accounts provide context for understanding how a historical tragedy transformed into contemporary terror. According to records maintained by temples in Niigata Prefecture, there existed accounts of a woman named Okiku who lived during the late Edo period. She was renowned throughout her region for extraordinary beauty, so beautiful that she attracted the attention of a powerful samurai lord who took her as his concubine. But Okiku's beauty became her curse. The samurai was possessive and violent, consumed by jealousy whenever other men looked at his concubine. He demanded absolute loyalty and punished any perceived transgression with brutal efficiency. When rumors reached him that Okiku had been unfaithful, rumors that may have been entirely fabricated by a rival, his rage was apocalyptic. According to the folklore, he didn't simply kill her. That would have been too merciful. Instead, he used his katana to slice her mouth from ear to ear, creating a grotesque, permanent smile. "Now no one will want you," he reportedly said. "Now you'll never be beautiful again." He forced her to look at her reflection in a polished mirror, making her confront her mutilation. Then he cast her out to die slowly from infection and blood loss. But Okiku didn't die quietly. According to the legend, she stumbled through the streets for days, her ruined face terrifying everyone she encountered. She would approach people, especially men, and ask, "Am I beautiful?" When they recoiled in horror, she would attack them with a blade, attempting to give them the same fate she'd suffered. Local authorities eventually tracked her down, but by then several men had been found dead or severely injured with their faces slashed. When she finally died, likely from infection or blood loss, the attacks didn't stop. Witnesses reported seeing a woman matching her description continuing to appear in the region, asking her question and attacking those who gave the wrong answer. Buddhist priests performed purification rituals and eventually the sightings ceased, or at least went underground, becoming whispered warnings passed down through generations. This historical foundation, whether entirely factual, partially embellished, or completely apocryphal, established the template. A beautiful woman mutilated by a jealous man becomes a vengeful spirit targeting others, particularly those who judge by appearance. The story carried forward through centuries, dormant but not forgotten, waiting for the right cultural moment to resurface. In the spring of 1979, elementary schools across Japan's Gifu prefecture began reporting an unusual phenomenon. Students were arriving at school visibly terrified, refusing to walk home alone, and clustering in groups even during daylight hours. When teachers asked what was wrong, the children told remarkably consistent stories about a woman in a surgical mask. Japan's post-war culture had normalized mask wearing. People with colds wore surgical masks as a courtesy to prevent spreading illness. So a woman in a mask shouldn't have been unusual. But according to the children's accounts, this woman behaved strangely. She would approach lone children near schools, parks, or walking paths and ask a simple question. "Watashi, kirei? Am I beautiful?" If the child said no, she would kill them immediately with scissors or a blade. If they said yes, she would remove her mask, revealing a mouth sliced from ear to ear in a grotesque permanent smile, and ask again, "How about now?" If the child screamed or said no, she would kill them. If they said yes, she would follow them home and slaughter them at their doorstep. If they tried to run, she would catch them. She could run at impossible speeds, up to 100 kilometers per hour according to some accounts. The only escape, according to the spreading legend, was to give an ambiguous answer. You're average, or you look ordinary. This would confuse her long enough for the victim to escape. Some versions claimed throwing fruit or candy at her would distract her, as she would stop to pick it up, giving victims time to run. What started as schoolyard rumors in Gifu Prefecture spread with terrifying velocity across Japan. Within weeks, reports were coming from Tokyo, Osaka, Kanagawa, Saitama, and dozens of other prefectures. The legend wasn't just spreading, it was causing genuine panic. By June 1979, the situation had escalated beyond typical urban legend territory into something unprecedented. Elementary schools in at least 15 prefectures reported the same pattern. Children too frightened to attend school alone, demanding that parents accompany them even during daylight. Refusing to participate in after-school activities. Police departments across Japan received hundreds of reports from children, and even some adults claiming to have encountered a woman matching the description. Prefectural police were forced to issue official statements addressing the legend, attempting to calm public fears while investigating whether any actual assaults were occurring. The Gifu Prefecture Police Department took the unusual step of increasing patrols near elementary schools and establishing a dedicated hotline for Kuchisake-Onna sightings. Officers were briefed on the legend and instructed to take reports seriously, not dismiss them as childish fantasies. The fact that law enforcement felt compelled to respond officially only reinforced public belief that something real was happening. Schools sent letters to parents, acknowledging the fear and providing safety guidelines. Children should walk in groups, stay on well-lit streets, and report any suspicious encounters to adults immediately. Some schools adjusted their schedules to ensure students wouldn't be walking home after dark. A few schools in rural areas where children had to walk long distances through isolated areas temporarily closed altogether. The media seized on the story. Television news programs featured segments about the legend, interviewing child psychiatrists and folklorists about the phenomenon. Newspapers ran articles analyzing the spread of the panic. Rather than calming fears, this coverage amplified them. Now even people who hadn't heard the story from peers were learning about it from supposedly authoritative sources, lending it additional credibility. Enterprising manufacturers produced Kuchisake-Onna protection charms, small amulets sold at convenience stores that supposedly warded off the spirit. The fact that these sold briskly indicated the depth of genuine fear gripping the public. Parents who considered themselves rational and educated purchased them for their children, just in case. The phenomenon represented something unprecedented in modern Japanese society, a legend that had jumped from folklore to real-world impact, affecting policy decisions, law enforcement resource allocation, and daily behavior patterns for millions of people. Among the hundreds of reported encounters in 1979, several stood out for their detail and the credibility of the witnesses. These accounts, documented by researchers and journalists at the time, provide insight into how the legend manifested and why it proved so terrifying. One of the most detailed accounts came from a university student in Fukushima Prefecture. 20-year-old Takahashi Yuki, name changed, was walking home from the library around 9 p.m. when she encountered a woman standing under a streetlight. The woman wore a beige trench coat and a surgical mask, nothing overtly threatening. But something about her posture made Takahashi uneasy. As Takahashi approached, the woman stepped directly into her path. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice muffled by the mask. "Am I beautiful?" Takahashi's blood froze. She'd heard the legend, of course, everyone had by that point, but she'd dismissed it as superstition. Now, faced with the exact scenario from the stories, her mind raced. She could see the woman's eyes above the mask, dark, intense, unblinking. I'm in a hurry, Takahashi stammered, trying to step around her. The woman moved with surprising speed, blocking her path again. Answer me. Am I beautiful? The tone had shifted, no longer a question, but a demand. Takahashi remembered the supposed escape tactic. You're average, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The woman went perfectly still. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly she tilted her head to one side in a gesture that seemed inhuman in its precision. Takahashi didn't wait. She ran, her heart hammering, not looking back until she reached the convenience store several blocks away. When she finally glanced behind her, the street was empty. She reported the encounter to police the next day. The officer taking her statement noted that she was a university student, older than the typical witnesses and clearly shaken. Her description matched others filed that week. The beige coat, the surgical mask, the unsettling intensity. Another significant account came from a police officer himself. Patrolman Nakamura Hiroshi, name changed, was on evening patrol in Saitama when he received a radio call about a suspicious woman near an elementary school. When he arrived, he found 3 children huddled together, visibly terrified, pointing toward a woman in a surgical mask standing approximately 50 meters away. Nakamura approached the woman to question her. As he got closer, he reported experiencing an overwhelming sense of wrongness, the same instinctive unease police officers learned to trust as danger warning. The woman was perfectly still, not responding to his approach, not acknowledging his presence even as he called out to identify himself as law enforcement. When he was about 3 meters away, the woman spoke without turning to face him. Am I beautiful? Nakamura reported that his hand moved instinctively to his service weapon. The woman's voice had been wrong somehow, too flat, lacking normal inflection. He ordered her to turn around slowly and show her hands. Instead, she simply walked away, moving at a normal pace, but somehow covering distance impossibly quickly. By the time Nakamura called for backup and secured the children, the woman had vanished completely despite the area offering limited places to hide. His official report carefully avoided supernatural language, describing only a suspicious individual who evaded questioning. But in private conversations with fellow officers, he admitted the encounter had deeply unsettled him. Something about the woman hadn't been right. These accounts, a university student and a police officer, both older and presumably more skeptical than elementary school children, suggested the phenomenon affected a broader demographic than initially believed. The legend wasn't contained to schoolyard fears. It had expanded into general public consciousness, shaping behavior and experiences across age groups. After the intense panic of 1979 subsided through the early 1980s, Kuchisake-Onna sightings became less frequent, relegated back to folklore and occasional reports. But the legend never entirely disappeared. It remained part of Japanese cultural consciousness, told at school sleepovers and discussed in late-night conversations. Then, in 2004, the legend experienced an unexpected resurgence. Reports began emerging from South Korea, specifically Gangwon province, of a woman in a red mask asking if she was beautiful and attacking those who gave wrong answers. The legend had jumped borders, adapting to Korean cultural context while maintaining its core elements. This Korean wave crossed back into Japan, reigniting interest in the original legend. A new generation of Japanese children who hadn't experienced the 1979 panic encountered the story fresh, finding it just as terrifying as their parents had. Internet forums and early social media allowed the legend to spread even faster than before, with people sharing alleged encounters and debating the entity's rules and origins. The 2004 resurgence differed from 1979 in several ways. The internet age meant skepticism was more readily available. People could quickly research the legend, find debunking articles, and share rational explanations. Yet paradoxically, the same internet connectivity allowed the story to spread more virally and mutate more rapidly, with new variations emerging almost daily. Some versions now incorporated modern elements. Kuchisake-Onna allegedly appeared in online videos, or cursed those who viewed certain websites. The traditional surgical mask became a designer mask in some tellings, or a red mask in Korean versions. Her weapon evolved from scissors to various blades to, in some accounts, supernatural powers that didn't require physical weapons at all. The legend had become a living thing, adapting to each new generation while maintaining its essential terror, the fear of being judged on appearance, the danger lurking in familiar settings, the entity that follows specific rules but offers no truly safe escape. Those who study urban legends and mass phenomena offer several explanations for Kuchisake-Onna's power and persistence. The legend taps into multiple deep-seated fears and reflects genuine social anxieties in ways that give it unusual resonance. Dr. Matsumoto Keiko, a folklorist at Tokyo University who studied the 1979 panic, noted that Kuchisake-Onna emerged during a period of rapid social change in Japan. The 1970s saw increasing urbanization, the breakdown of traditional community structures, and growing anxiety about stranger danger in cities where neighbors no longer knew each other. The legend embodied these fears. A stranger who appears normal but harbors malevolent intent, striking in familiar everyday settings. The legend also reflects Japan's complex relationship with appearance and beauty standards. The woman's question, "Am I beautiful?" puts victims in an impossible position. Honesty leads to death. Dishonesty also leads to death. Only ambiguity offers escape, suggesting that rigid judgments about appearance are inherently dangerous. The mutilation itself, the sliced mouth creating a permanent smile, can be read as dark commentary on the pressure to maintain pleasant appearances regardless of internal suffering. Psychologists point to the phenomenon of mass psychogenic illness, collective anxiety manifesting as shared experiences that feel genuine to those experiencing them. When enough people believe in and fear something, their heightened anxiety can create misperceptions and false memories that reinforce the belief. A woman in a surgical mask walking near a school becomes Kuchisake-Onna in the mind of a frightened child primed to see her. The 1979 panic occurred before widespread skepticism about urban legends. Children in that era had less exposure to media literacy and critical thinking about viral stories. When peers they trusted reported encounters, they had little framework for questioning the accounts. Combined with the very real fear these stories generated, it created conditions where genuine panic could spread rapidly. Sociologists note that the legend serves important social functions. It provides a shared narrative that bonds peer groups, trading stories about Kuchisake-Onna, discussing escape strategies and supporting each other's fear creates social cohesion. It also allows children to process anxieties about independence and danger in a framework that feels manageable through following rules, even if those rules are supernatural rather than practical. Researchers and journalists have attempted to trace Kuchisake-Onna to an original source, a patient zero, from which the modern legend spread. This investigation reveals how folklore evolves and adapts across time. The most credible theory connects back to those Edo period accounts from Niigata Prefecture. Regional historians note that stories about a mutilated woman asking about beauty were documented in that area as early as the 1800s. These local legends never disappeared entirely, but were passed down through families as cautionary tales. In the 1970s, according to research by folklorist Yanagita Kunio's successors, a children's book publisher in Gifu Prefecture released a collection of regional ghost stories that included a sanitized version of the Niigata legend. The book was marketed to elementary schools and libraries throughout central Japan. Teachers used it for reading exercises and storytelling sessions. Children, being children, naturally focused on the most disturbing elements: the mutilated face, the impossible choice, the violent consequences. They began retelling the story to peers, embellishing details and updating elements to contemporary settings. A woman in Edo period clothing became a woman in modern dress with a surgical mask. The katana became scissors, a weapon familiar and accessible to children. The vague, "she will attack you," became specific and rule-bound, offering the illusion of escape through correct responses. By the time the story reached mass consciousness in spring 1979, it had been filtered through hundreds of retellings, each adding small variations while maintaining core elements. No single person created the modern version. It emerged from collective storytelling, a genuinely crowdsourced urban legend drawing on ancient foundations. Some researchers point to potential real-world triggers that amplified the legend. In 1978, several incidents involving mentally ill individuals approaching children occurred in different prefectures. None matched the Kuchisake-Onna description exactly, but the incidents created generalized anxiety about stranger danger. When the legend began circulating shortly afterward, it found a population already primed for fear. Additionally, Japan in the late 1970s was experiencing a wave of plastic surgery becoming more socially acceptable. Advertisements for cosmetic procedures were increasingly visible, and public discussions about beauty standards and surgical alteration were more open than in previous decades. This cultural backdrop made a legend about beauty, mutilation, and appearance particularly resonant. Despite increased skepticism and media literacy, reports of Kuchisake-Onna encounters continue sporadically. Modern accounts differ from the 1979 wave. They're less frequent, more likely to be shared online rather than reported to police, and often include acknowledgement that the encounter might have mundane explanations. A 2015 account from a college student in Kyoto illustrates the modern experience. The student posted on a popular forum about encountering a woman in a surgical mask near campus late at night. The woman had stared intensely at the student, but never spoke. The student admitted feeling frightened and walking faster to avoid interaction, then realized later they might have just encountered someone with a cold, wearing a mask normally. But the lingering unease, the way their mind immediately jumped to Kuchisake-Onna, demonstrated the legend's continued psychological power. A 2018 report from Yokohama described a woman in a mask approaching children near an elementary school and asking questions. Police investigated and discovered the woman was a recent immigrant who spoke limited Japanese and was trying to ask directions to a medical clinic. The children, primed by knowledge of the legend, had misinterpreted her halting questions and run away terrified. The woman had been confused and worried by their reaction, not threatening at all. These modern accounts reveal how the legend shapes perception and interpretation. A perfectly innocent encounter becomes sinister through the lens of cultural knowledge about Kuchisake-Onna. The legend doesn't require genuine supernatural activity to affect behavior and experience. It does so simply by existing in cultural consciousness. As Kuchisake-Onna spread beyond Japan, the legend adapted to local cultures while maintaining recognizable core elements. In South Korea, she became Keomyeon-maum, with variations in her appearance and rules. In China, similar legends emerged featuring mutilated women asking questions. The basic template proved highly adaptable to different cultural contexts. Modern Japanese variations have introduced new elements. Some versions claim Kuchisake-Onna is actually a victim of botched plastic surgery, seeking revenge on a society that pressures women to pursue beauty through surgical means. Others suggest she's the spirit of a woman killed by her abusive husband, her mutilation a literal manifestation of emotional damage. Internet-age variations incorporate technology. One version claims that viewing a specific image of Kuchisake-Onna online curses the viewer. Another suggests she can appear in video calls or messages. These adaptations demonstrate the legend's flexibility. It evolves to remain relevant to each generation's fears and the environments they navigate daily. The escape methods have also multiplied. Beyond the original average response, newer versions suggest saying "pomade" 3 times confuses her, or asking if she thinks you're beautiful turns the question back on her. Some claim running into a hair salon protects you because she fears hairdressers. Each variation adds to the legend's complexity while maintaining its essential terror. Regardless of supernatural validity, Kuchisake-Onna's impact on Japanese culture is undeniable and measurable. The legend has inspired numerous films, manga, anime, and novels. She appears in video games and theme park attractions. Kuchisake-Onna is recognizable shorthand in Japanese media for urban legends and contemporary horror. The 1979 panic influenced how Japanese authorities respond to mass phenomena. Police departments developed protocols for addressing widespread fear, even when no actual crime has occurred. Schools established procedures for managing student anxiety about urban legends. Mental health professionals studied the panic as a case study in collective behavior and anxiety transmission. The legend also sparked broader discussions about media responsibility, the power of folklore in modern society, and how traditional supernatural beliefs adapt to contemporary contexts. Academics across multiple disciplines, folklore, psychology, sociology, media studies, have used Kuchisake-Onna as a lens for understanding how information spreads, how fear propagates, and how ancient narratives maintain relevance in technological society. For many Japanese who lived through the 1979 panic, Kuchisake-Onna remains a vivid childhood memory. The fear of walking home alone, the protective strategies they developed, the way the legend made familiar spaces feel dangerous. That shared experience bonds entire generations, creating a collective memory that transcends the question of whether the entity was ever real. What we're left with is a question that challenges simple categorization. Is Kuchisake-Onna a supernatural entity with roots in historical tragedy, or a psychological phenomenon that demonstrates the power of collective belief and anxiety? The evidence doesn't provide a definitive answer. Those who believe in the supernatural point to the historical foundations, the Edo period accounts, the documented pattern of a woman mutilated and seeking revenge, the way the legend preserves genuine cultural memory of violence against women. They note that mass hysteria doesn't typically follow such consistent patterns across decades and regions unless triggered by genuine phenomena. Skeptics counter that every element has rational explanations. The Edo period accounts were likely cautionary tales rather than documented fact. The 1979 panic demonstrates classic mass psychogenic illness amplified by media coverage. Modern encounters reflect the legend's psychological impact rather than supernatural reality. The consistency across regions simply shows how effectively the story template spreads and replicates. Yet certain questions nag at comfortable skepticism. Why this legend specifically? Why did Kuchisake-Onna achieve unprecedented cultural penetration while similar legends remained localized or brief? What combination of factors made this particular story powerful enough to trigger official government and law enforcement response? Why do people still report encounters decades later, even knowing the legend, even understanding the psychological explanations? What is it about seeing a woman in a surgical mask that still raises primal unease in those familiar with the story? Whether Kuchisake-Onna marks the transformation of historical tragedy into vengeful spirit or represents the most successful urban legend in modern Japanese history, her impact transcends the question of literal truth. She exists at the intersection of folklore and reality, ancient trauma and contemporary anxiety, collective fear, and individual experience. For those who encountered her in 1979, or believe they encountered her, the experience was real enough to shape their lives, to create lasting fear, to make them question the boundaries between possible and impossible. For researchers studying collective behavior and cultural transmission, she represents a unique case study in how legends evolve, spread, and impact society. The legend of Kuchisake-Onna teaches us that truth is complex. A story can be false in literal terms, yet true in cultural and psychological impact. An entity can be non-existent physically, yet profoundly real in its effects on human behavior and experience. Somewhere in Japan tonight, a child will hear the story for the first time. They'll learn about the woman in the surgical mask, the impossible question, the escape tactics that might or might not work. They'll walk home more cautiously, glancing at strangers more warily, feeling their heartbeat accelerate when they see a surgical mask in dim light. And somewhere, a woman in a surgical mask will walk down a darkened street, heading home from work or running errands, unaware that her presence triggers atavistic fear in those who see her. She'll wonder why children cross the street to avoid her, why adults give her wide berth, not realizing she embodies a legend that has haunted Japan for decades. The question isn't whether Kuchisake-Onna is real. The question is what real means when a story becomes so powerful that it shapes collective consciousness, influences behavior across generations, and transforms ordinary encounters into moments of existential terror. The question is whether supernatural existence is the only form of reality that matters, or if cultural and psychological reality carries its own weight and truth. Am I beautiful? The wrong answer has always been certainty, absolute belief, or absolute skepticism. The only safe response is ambiguity, acknowledging that some things exist in the space between, defying simple categorization. Kuchisake-Onna lives in that space, neither fully real nor entirely imagined, waiting at the edge of streetlights and the boundaries of explanation.
We made it out of this one, but the darkness runs deep. If you think you can handle it, check out the other cases on the channel. Don't risk losing the signal. Like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. The next investigation is starting now.